there's a compound in your gut that is inflaming you right now. If you're doing everything correctly, your diet's on point, but you're still feeling inflamed, it's most likely endotoxin. Regardless of how healthy you eat, you can feed those bacteria that create, and endotoxin creates inflammation everywhere in the body. And we know that inflammation accelerates aging and aging-related conditions. Weight gain, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, liver dysfunction, autoimmune conditions, low testosterone, hormonal dysregulation, high cortisol, low cortisol, everything that you can think of that puts you in a negative state or takes you away from being optimal can be tracked back to endotoxin. So what exactly is endotoxin? Endotoxin is the cell wall of a gram-negative bacteria. So we have the outer membrane here, and this is the endotoxin part, and they can release that endotoxin, whether they are alive or if you kill them as well. So let's say you use an antimicrobial protocol, suddenly you start to feel bad. It's because that's what they call die-off, where you release endotoxin, which then inflames the body. So now you get a whole flood of this into your body, creating inflammation. So the endotoxin consists of three main parts. You have the O antigen part up top. You have the core oligosaccharide here. Then you have the lipids here at the bottom. Now this lipid part specifically is what's responsible for the inflammation that it causes, how severe the inflammation is. Now you get a host of different kinds of endotoxin. It sounds like one thing, but there's multiple kinds. It's almost like saying saturated fat. There's many different kinds of saturated fats and chain lengths and so on. So same thing with endotoxin, where depending on the lipids here at the bottom that it contains determines how inflammatory it is. So you have different bacteria that's much more inflammatory than other ones due to the kind of endotoxin that they release. So something benign like Akkermansia, which a lot of people are actually supplementing at this time, actually also creates and releases endotoxin, but it's not really inflammatory, or it almost works in a homeostatic way. However, when in excess, it can also become harmful. Whereas something like Salmonella releases a very inflammatory toxin, and that's why you get really sick. Now, if you have a lot of these really harmful endotoxin-producing bacteria, you'll have high levels of inflammation, which will lead to rapid deterioration. But if you have overgrowth of a milder endotoxin-producing bacteria, then you will have slower degeneration, where you feel like, I'm not terrible, but I feel like I can be much better. I can function at a higher level. Most people have overgrowth of that lesser harmful endotoxin, but still in large amounts, it becomes a problem. So your gram-negative bacteria releases endotoxin, which is also called lipopolysaccharides, which then binds to the endotoxin receptor TLR4. It binds to this CD14 and through another unknown at the moment intracellular receptor, which then all of these processes basically induces inflammation. So regardless of what receptor it acts on, it just creates inflammation, cell death, and deteriorates you faster. Now, as I mentioned, you have this hyperinflammation when, let's say, you get a Salmonella infection, right? It creates a lot of inflammation. Then if the immune system can adapt, and the body can adapt, you enter a hypoinflammation state, and then you reach that homeostasis, right? That adaptation process. But if the inflammation is not resolved, this is when you die. This is when an infection gets so severe, you reach a condition called sepsis, which is an excess of endotoxin in the body, which inflames you so much you just die. So for example, Akkermansia might create a relatively benign endotoxin, but that also stimulates the immune system. It's almost like exercise, where exercise is harmful in excess, but if you adapt to it, it's beneficial. So same thing with this endotoxin, something like Akkermansia, it's still harmful in a way, but it upregulates the body's ability to deal with other endotoxin. So this is what it's linked to, and this is just a very, very short list. It's basically all degenerative conditions: low testosterone, thyroid dysfunction, any kind of hormonal dysfunction, insulin resistance, mitochondrial damage, brain fog, fatigue, depression, any kind of neurological condition that you might suffer from, fibrosis, liver stress, Alzheimer's. It will inflame your gut. It will lead to more gut issues. So this is where it's a catch-22, where you have gut issues, which can then worsen gut issues because it inflames the gut, it inhibits the absorption of nutrients, and the worse your vitamins and mineral deficiencies become, the less effective your body becomes at managing the inflammation. So everything escalates really quickly. So now let's discuss a couple ways of why you have elevated endotoxin in the body. Now, first of all, in a healthy gut, you will have endotoxin but it stays in the gut, right? So there's not a lot that's entering into your bloodstream that then causes inflammation. But if you have leaky gut, a lot of that endotoxin, even if the absolute amount of endotoxin just remains the same, will suddenly become more inflammatory because it's actually going into the bloodstream and activating the immune system. Now, things that can trigger leaky gut would be any kind of inflammation. So that would be eating gluten, eating a food that you're allergic to or that creates inflammation in the intestine. You're eating food that is actually feeding the pathogenic bacteria that's creating endotoxin. Even something like stress specifically causes leaky gut because it diverts blood flow away from the intestines. And then it becomes more leaky. And then more endotoxin absorbs into the body. Like a good example of this is exercise. A lot of people think exercise is a good thing, but if you exercise for too long, especially like the endurance kind of exercise where you exercise for a long period of time, even if it's not really high intense, you will get more leaky gut. So for example, 20 minutes of 80% VO2 max can spike permeability by 3-fold, and your endotoxin just spikes up. And this worsens your adaptation to the exercise. It creates more muscle damage. It basically just prevents you from adapting properly. And this is why people, when they exercise, they actually feel worse off than ever making progress. They reach a point where the body can no longer adapt to the stressor, and something like endotoxin can contribute to that state. Other things that can contribute: alcohol, NSAIDs, poor sleep, excess omega-6, because everything creates inflammation. Reason number 2 is bacterial overgrowth, because the endotoxin itself is inflammatory, and the more inflammation it creates in the intestine, the more it will break down that barrier and it will create leaky gut. So, for example, SIBO, where you have overgrowth in the small intestine, there's this constant endotoxin near the absorptive surface, which then creates inflammation, that leaky gut. So triggers would be low stomach acid, because you're not digesting the food properly and more undigested food reaches the bacteria. And you don't want an excess amount of any nutrient reaching bacteria, because they will create harmful compounds such as endotoxin that will create inflammation and contribute to leaky gut. Poor bile flow, because bile is antimicrobial and antifungal. So if your bile flow is compromised, then you will also have an overgrowth of specific bacteria. It's a little bit more complicated than just that, but poor bile flow contributes a lot. High PUFA diet and slow motility. The faster you can excrete the bacteria and the endotoxin, the less likely it will create inflammation. Reason 3 is impaired liver clearance. So you will absorb some endotoxin, which will then go to the liver. You have these Kupffer cells that then clear and deactivate the endotoxin. There's other enzymes like alkaline phosphatase in the intestine and also in the liver that then de-endotoxin and clears it. Now, if the amount of endotoxin overwhelms the capacity of those cells, or if your liver is no longer healthy and your Kupffer cells doesn't work adequately enough, or alkaline phosphatase expression is downregulated for some reason, even a normal amount of endotoxin will create more inflammation. Or if you have overgrowth of a specific opportunistic bacteria that creates harmful endotoxin, it will inflame the body. So you have to make sure your liver is really healthy to be able to clear the endotoxin that reaches it. And then you also have slow transit time. I briefly touched on this, but the slower your transit time is, you don't want your transit time to be too fast or too slow. So the ideal is around 18 to 24. If you go lower than that, it verges on too fast. If you go over that, it verges on too long. Now the problem is, if it's too long, it gives the bacteria more time to ferment on compounds that hasn't been absorbed by the body. So the longer it can ferment, the more time it has to create endotoxin and poisons. So this is oftentimes why people will feel significantly better when they do fasting or intermittent fasting, because they're not feeding that bacteria. So inflammation drop, endotoxin drop, etc. And they feel better. If they eat food, they start to feel bad again. So you want to make sure your transit time is on point, but before transit time even, you want to make sure your digestion is on point, because if you're not digesting food properly, more undigested food particles will reach the bacteria regardless of how fast your transit time is. So it's kind of like twofold, where you want to make sure you enhance your digestion, make sure it's working really well. You want to make sure you're absorbing those nutrients in the small intestine, and then whatever is left that reaches the colon is not an excess that's not going to feed the pathogenic bacteria. And it's not just fiber. It's even polyphenols. It's even fructose, lactose, amino acids that can be converted into harmful compounds by the gut bacteria that creates inflammation. And when the environment of the intestine becomes unfavorable, it allows for the overgrowth of other pathogenic bacteria. So in my experience, when it comes to feeding the beneficial bacteria with high fiber, I had a massive bloom or an increase in opportunistic bacteria as well, because beneficial bacteria can actually cross-feed to opportunistic bacteria. So a lower fiber approach is often better for people that want to control pathogenic bacteria while they're working on sorting out their gut issues. So the point is, I'm not saying like you should be avoiding all fiber. I'm just saying be careful that high fiber diets, and I'm talking like not diversity, I'm talking like the grams of fiber a day, especially if it's highly fermentable, can also contribute to the overgrowth of pathogenic bacteria. Now, so let's talk about the fixes here. The first fix is to, first of all, seal the gut. If you have leaky gut, more endotoxin is going to be absorbed, and you want to seal that so that the endotoxin that's in the gut stays in the gut and you can just poop it out. So never train fasted for hard sessions, because as I mentioned, prolonged exercise, especially in the fasted state, will contribute to leaky gut. Consuming some amino acids, let's say essential amino acids and carbohydrates beforehand, like honey or glucose powder, can actually help to massively offset or completely prevent that leaky gut induced by fasted exercise. Swap your seed oils for saturated fats. Now keep in mind that saturated fats can actually enhance the absorption of endotoxin as well, especially the longer chain ones, which then transport the endotoxin to the liver. Now that's not a bad thing if your liver can actually clear it, but if someone does have an excessive amount of endotoxin, consuming too much saturated fat might actually not be a good idea. Add glycine, that will help. High dose of glutamine can also help, and then also protect your sleep, ease up on NSAIDs and alcohol and anything that can contribute to leaky gut. There's a bunch of other supplements that you can also do to help to fix the gut, but always begin with the basics. Fix number 2 is reduce bacterial overgrowth. Now, the way you do this is, as I mentioned already, is easier to digest foods. You want to optimize your digestion. You want to enhance the absorption in the small intestine so that as little as possible fermentable compounds reaches the bacteria. So it basically starves them, which is why a higher fiber diet and a higher residue diet caused my pathogenic bacteria to bloom. And you don't need high fiber in order to have a healthy microbiome. Let's say even 5 to 10 grams of fiber, my beneficial bacteria is very happy in optimal ranges. Then you can add bitters because that helps to support bile flow. As I mentioned, bile is antimicrobial. Then fermentable fibers daily. So this is highly person specific, and it's really difficult to give a suggestion of what someone should eat, because someone might tolerate apples really well, but bananas really badly. Or they might tolerate onion, but not garlic, cabbage, maybe not broccoli. It's so individual which foods make you feel good and which doesn't, and which will feed pathogenic bacteria in which won't. So I'm not saying you should be avoiding all fiber. You can have fiber. It's just make sure that the fiber that you do consume is not also feeding the pathogenic bacteria. And then cut all ultra-processed seed oils. The way you kill your bacterial overgrowth is just to starve them. If they don't have food, they will not grow. You don't have to start with the antimicrobial protocol. Fix number 3 is support your liver clearance, because as I mentioned, endotoxin can go to the liver and your liver have to clear it. Now, your liver is the most nutrient dense, or is the organ that accumulates most vitamins and minerals. So if you look at chronometer, and you look at muscle meat, you look at heart, kidney, and the liver, you will see that liver is extremely rich in vitamins and minerals. Now, this is oftentimes why eating those foods actually supports your liver, because your liver accumulates those nutrients at a very high level. And if you have a deficiency, your liver won't be able to function optimally. So support it with nutrient-dense foods. Then you bind the toxins in the gut so they don't even become absorbed. Any kind of binder like white button, mushroom, Enteric gel, modified citrus pectin, etc. all work really well. Glycine and taurine, highly anti-inflammatory and supports liver function. Glycine specifically supports Kupffer cells and help to reduce the inflammation caused by endotoxin. And then also optimize transit time so that you excrete the endotoxin instead of it being absorbed and going to the liver. And then fix number 4, which is speed up your transit time. If it's too slow, you want to fix it. A simple test that you can do is either with corn, beetroot, or activated charcoal. So you want to consume it and then time to see how long it takes to come out the other side. And this is basically how you do a transit time test. So it's over 24 hours. So I would highly recommend you optimize and speed it up. Things that can help would be even 2 kiwis a day. It's been shown to significantly improve transit time and reduce intestinal inflammation. Prunes and prune juice. You have something like carnitine, binders. Now this is very unrated, because when there's inflammation in the intestine, the contraction of the intestine becomes impaired, and this leads to slow transit time and even constipation. I've often recommended Enteric gel or white button mushroom to people with constipation, and it actually solved it, because it bound to the endotoxin, it reduced inflammation. Now the cells can actually work better because they're no longer inflamed, and that basically fixes your transit time. Now, this is the complete simplified version of this whole process. I have a massive guide on how to lower endotoxin and fix all of the root causes, starting with diet, digestion, going into depth in what to eat, food combinations, supplements, etc. So if you're interested in that, link is in the description below. Thanks for watching. I will check you in the next one.